Hey everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm James, that's Katie, and that makes this the first ever episode 28 of Cloud Control. And Kate, might I just be the first to say, the very first episode from your new house, welcome to your new home.
That's true, it is. It's very exciting. Thank you. Please stay tuned for how much different it looks when there's stuff on the walls and it isn't just a weird box of boxes right now.
We've been through a few moves over the podcast in the last little bit, and so hopefully, I'm just hoping this is like the last one we have for a while. It's a lot of work, man, moving all those boxes.
I'm kind of sick of it, to be honest. Like, I was watching one of the indie directs for Summer Game Fest, and they had unpacking coming to phone. I was like, oh great, unpacking's so fun. And then I looked around my house and I was like, oh, I don't want to do that.
It's like, this is the last game I want to play right now. Oh my god.
This game is terrible in real life.
Is there a game that the fun decreases more from the game version to the real life version than unpacking? I don't think so.
I mean, I'm also playing Bloodborne, and I will say I don't think I'd want to do that in real life either.
Okay, well, I guess the caveat is like the game has to exist in real life. I was thinking like FIFA, you know, like play some soccer. It's pretty fun either way you do it.
That's true. The ratio is a hell of a lot better than unpacking, but yeah, it's fun for the first day, and then you're like, no, please, no.
Pretty much, but yeah. So I guess that affects our recording just a little bit in the sense that this is like, you know, we're tweaking the setup here. If the audio is a bit weird on Kate's side or something, we'll fix it next time. Same for my audio actually too. We'll see. But yeah, so I guess that's your news. I got some news too. For those that have been listening to the recent episodes we put out, Kate and I have developed like a new wager system for how we're doing our predictions around different showcases and events. And so, you know, I was the inaugural loser of our first prediction event. I lost our PlayStation Showcase prediction competition. So before we get into the show today at all, I just want to talk to you about my cheap game I had to buy for $3 because that's our rule. Whoever does worse on predictions has to buy a $3 or less game and, you know, subject ourselves to a little bit of what we find. So without further ado, I played a little game called Jetboard Joust, and I found this game. It was $3 on Epic Games. It came to $3.07 after tax. We agreed tax doesn't count. Didn't break the rules.
That's fine.
So, you know, there was a little bit of competition, but I tried this one out because it interested me in terms of what it was. It's actually a roguelike, and it's kind of loosely based on... So do you remember that classic kind of arcade game we would have played back in the day on like Shockwave or something, and it was called Joust, and you had to like run into the people?
On those like big ostrich things, right?
Yeah. So this is Jetboard Joust.
I do remember.
It's got some like sort of similar mechanics. Basically what you're doing is you're this guy on the jetboard, and you are taking out aliens that are coming from the sky to abduct people on the ground, and you're trying to stop people from getting taken by aliens. And you have some guns, you have your board, you can use your board to boost into the enemies, or you can shoot them. And as you kill them, you collect currency and whatnot, and as you finish the level, there's like a vault, that triangle thing for anyone watching on video. It goes underground. There's some weapons in there. You can like buy different guns, and then you can, in between levels, use your currency to like upgrade those guns or upgrade your suit, upgrade your board. So the idea is kind of cool. I mean, pretty basic from what you can see. I played a little bit. It's interesting. Like, I couldn't really figure out exactly how the currency worked. Like, I don't know if it collects between runs or if you can just spend it like on the run you're currently on. But yeah, I mean, this is pretty much the whole game. It's a little bit of fun, but I mean, it's hard to steer. That's the one thing I will tell you. That's the first thing I noticed is like, it's quite imprecise. Like, I found it hard to line up my shots against the enemies, but I also think maybe that's why you need to upgrade the guns. It's like incentive to make it further or something. There's a little story. There's like the story is my favorite part of the game, actually. There's like a little cutscene before, and there's, 5 different planets come up, and there's some cheesy story, and then there's 5 guardians put on each one, and you got to make it through the levels to take them out and save the planet or whatever it is. So this is Jetboard Joust, Kate. What do you think?
You know what? It doesn't look good, but it looks cute for $3. And I hope you didn't suffer too extremely by having to play it.
Listen, there were some things I saw on there that I could have, like I said, there's some things that you can find that are like discounted good games like BioShock and whatever. It's $2 sometimes, or Dishonored and whatever. But I didn't want to go that route. And then I wasn't about to play like one of those cheap platinum shitty platformers that just has nothing. So I took a chance and I think I succeeded. So what I think we should do is whoever loses the next bet, spoiler alert, it might be me again when we get there. I think we should keep like a running list of like a tier list of the games we buy for these challenges. So like the next game, it'll be upon me to decide if it's better or worse than Jetboard Joust.
And Jetboard Joust. Okay, I love it. Jetboard Joust is our current like FIFA, like the benchmark game. Like,
Exactly.
Is it better or is it worse?
Exactly. I really like that idea. And then eventually we'll have like a list of all these games. Anyway, that was Jetboard Joust. I don't want to spend any more time on it because we have a lot to talk about on the show today. So I'll let you know. We're going to be recapping Summer Game Fest and everything that was shown at the showcase a few days ago. And then, coincidentally, one of the things shown at the showcase was a gameplay demo or gameplay section for Lies of P, and a demo was announced during the showcase, and we've both played at least part of the demo, and we're going to tell you all about our thoughts on that at the end of the show. So that'll be great. We're going to start off with Summer Game Fest recap, like we said, but of course, we're going to do listener mail first, actually, because our listener mail question this week is about Summer Game Fest. And it's simply, what did you think of the show? What were your overall impressions? And we'd love to hear from you if you want to email us in at cloudcontrolpod@proton.me, or you can comment, of course, on YouTube or wherever you're listening as well. But I'd like to extend that question to you, Kate. What did you think of Summer Game Fest?
Time watching Summer Game Fest. Always do. Maybe my bias is just towards like I just like watching it, and like I'm pretty easily entertained by the offerings they have. I would say that for things I'm personally excited about, it was a little sparse, but I think that there overall were a lot of really fun announcements. And the way Jeff does it is just so rapid fire, and Jeff is such a great host that there was maybe one part where okay, you can get off the stage. It's gone on a little long, when they had a surprise guest. But overall, I really enjoyed it, and if you're a Final Fantasy fan, you are eating well tonight.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, I totally agree too. And like the thing that stuck out for me the most is just having the crowd back in there as well. Like you can tell, like it's not even so much about the crowd for me. It's more like how Jeff is able to play to the crowd a little bit. And it's just different delivering a presentation, I think, in like a full, stadium or theater versus on a stage. It's kind of, by yourself with a production crew or something. Like it's just more genuine, I think. So I really like the energy of having the crowd and everything there. But yeah, it was a great presentation, and I think, and lots of good stuff shown. So let's get right into that. So it started off with a new Prince of Persia game, which was, I don't know if that was rumored or not. I'm not too sure, but I think it looked pretty cool. It's a Metroidvania style as well. Like they're not doing the 3D action. So I think this is one to keep our eyes on.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I've ever really been into the Prince of Persia franchise. I couldn't even really tell you a hell of a lot about it aside from just, vaguely being able to decipher it based on the setting. But it actually looks pretty cool. The combat looks fun. It looks fast. There's platforming. Like I think this actually is a game I'm surprisingly going to keep my eye on.
Yeah, I think the fact it's Metroidvania is interesting as well. I know there was a lot of people hoping for Sands of Time remake, which is like, so I think that's the iconic game of the series, right? I'm not really familiar with Prince of Persia either, but I know like Sands of Time was so iconic, like the ability to rewind and all that back in the day, and the wall run was so cool. But yeah,
I agree, but I think like a Metroidvania makes so much sense for the franchise, right? Because like you have those platforming elements, like it's got some combat, you're gonna get all the power-ups, so like maybe that sand rewind is gonna play into it at some point, and like all those kind of like gimmicks that might have been like for one specific game can now just be like repurposed to like just upgrade paths for this new Lost Crown. So
yeah, true enough. And I know the game, like those games were originally 2D as well, so it's kind of a cool throwback to those really old ones.
Yeah.
So after that, Mortal Kombat 1 got an extended first look. And I don't know how, like, it's another fighting game thing. We always say the same thing, but I mean, I really like the way they're resetting it, I think, like I can appreciate that. It's such a long running franchise. It seems like at least they're changing up, like Scorpion and Sub-Zero are friends now or something. Like, that must be cool, I think, for people to get a refresh.
I agree. I think just like it's what we always say, right? If you're into Mortal Kombat, this is awesome. If you're not into Mortal Kombat, it's more Mortal Kombat. So
Yeah.
Some characters look cool. Like the game looks great. I really like that sword guy who's got like the ghost that fights with him. That's a cool new character. I hope my bug girl's back in it, but she wasn't in the trailer, so
Don't
hard to
get your
tell.
hopes up. Maybe. You know, how do you feel about the assist fighter thing like they're doing with that? Because it's kind of like that Marvel vs. Capcom style thing, you know, where you can call in your partners and they can attack for you. And it seems like they can do some combos and stuff too.
Yeah, and that, as far as I know, is new to Mortal Kombat. I think it was always just a one-on-one before, right? Where I
Yeah.
think Injustice was the one that had the more characters.
Well, it's still one-on-one. You can't play as the
Yeah.
characters, but they can just kind of come in, and I mean, it's kind of like a expanded move set, I guess, for the character you pick. I don't know how it works, but
Yeah.
I mean, it seems
I don't know,
seems
it
kind of
could be
interesting. I'm
I guess
glad it's
like have, like, a mix
differentiated
and
from
match, sort of.
yeah. I'm glad it's differentiated from Street Fighter because
Mhm.
Street Fighter's just killing it right now, and it would be good to have like multiple different, you know, different versions of a fighting game to come out. So I'm glad they're not like taking the same exact formula for each of the games. Not that I'll play this, but I might play Street Fighter though. It looks really fun. Single player. Okay, Path of Exile 2. I missed a little bit of this one, I'm not going to lie. I was kind of distracted during part of the presentation, so I'm going to let you take the lead on this one.
Yeah. It's like Diablo 4, but it's not Diablo. It's Path of Exile. This is definitely one of those like ARPGs, like the top-down clicky dungeon ones. Build your character.
We've got thousands of.
Yeah.
Have a.
That was an ad, everybody. Sorry about that. It's Walmart intruding on the podcast.
I'll be honest, that scared the shit out of me. I was like, I'm dead. I've accepted my mortality. Wow, okay. Well, let me tell you, there's a few horror games coming up, and none of them are as scary as that. So I'm ready for those at least.
You know, from Path of Exile has some really nice graphics.
It is a very pretty game, actually. And I will say, like, the aesthetic of Path of Exile has always looked really good. Like, it's got that kind of, like, dark, like, grim dark, like, deep, dark fantasy kind of thing, and it pulls it off really well. But yeah, I didn't even realize there was a second game being made. That first game is like seems like it's still getting updated and like constantly getting new things. So this is definitely a cool surprise.
Yeah, I don't know if we knew about this either, but I'm like, this is not what I keep track of really. This is like I see this at the showcase and I'm like, oh, okay, nice. Yeah, that's great though. That's great. Hopefully, Diablo 4's popularity can kind of boost this game as well because Diablo 4 is killing it.
Yeah, and maybe give your money to the non-Blizzard version that also looks cool.
That could be cool too.
Just an option.
Consider. Okay, so then we had Street Fighter 6. Oops, just kidding. It's Exoprimal. But the skin for Ryu introduced here is very cool. Like he's like a mechanized version of himself. They do like a Hadouken in there too, so it's like kind of looked like Street Fighter for a minute, but yeah, Exoprimal. I think it's coming to Game Pass, but I don't know if this one's for me. It doesn't seem to be I don't know, it's not standing out to me in any way, really.
I was very confused at the start of this trailer because I was like, oh, Street Fighter, oh, perfect, here comes the new character announcement. And I was like, no, Exoprimal. And it was just like the weirdest, seemingly the weirdest crossover ever until the next thing happened. Which is not in this list that we are looking at, but one cannot forget that your good old friend Nick Cage showed up.
That was the best part of the showcase, was it not?
This was so funny to me because you watched this before I did. I was at school and I wasn't able to watch it live, so I had to get caught up in the evening. And you told me, you're like, okay, after Exoprimal, like you're gonna be blown away. You said something like
my
that.
exact words were, after Exoprimal is the greatest trailer of all, the greatest character intro trailer of all time. I think was my text.
Yeah. I think that's what you said, but the way I read it was like, oh, I'm gonna be excited about the next thing. I was watching it with someone and Exoprimal came on. I was like, oh, the next thing's gonna be awesome. Like the next thing's gonna be so excited. I was like trying to think like what is it gonna be? and then Nicolas Cage shows up and it turns out he's in Dead by Daylight, which is hilarious. But I think it's a big missed opportunity that he's not one of the monsters you can play as. He's just like a survivor you can be.
That is what I thought. I think
being the Nick Cage monster that's like chasing your friends down and gonna kill you as Nick Cage would be like so incredibly funny.
I 100% agree. Like, but that trailer, he just walks up And then he just leaves. Like,
Just
he
walks
doesn't say
off.
anything. It's just like awesome. But then Nick Cage himself came out, and I think he killed it, to be honest. Like, a lot of the time,
Yeah.
these celebrities come on and you can tell, like, like The Rock comes on with his energy drink, and he's like,
Yeah.
hey gamers, do you like video games? Like, he doesn't have any idea what's going on. But like this Nick Cage, like, he seemed like he legit knew what he was talking about. I'm sure he gets briefed and stuff, and he's obviously like a good speaker, but he seemed to be like actually somewhat knowledgeable about the game that he was in, and I found that so refreshing.
I think he's gotten to the point too where like he knows he's a meme and like he's embraced that. So they probably came to him and was like, hey, everyone thinks you're funny. Do you want to be in this like kind of funny horror game? And he was like all on board for doing that kind of work. So I think he knew it was like sort of a joke, and like he really just like went like full on board with that premise, which like I respect the guy for that.
Totally, right? Totally. But at least he knew the subject matter too, which is like, it's a joke, and he knew his stuff. Like, I think he was great. It's like the greatest celebrity of all time that showed up at Game Fest or something. Yeah.
He's the new Keanu Reeves of 2023.
That's right. Just gotta hope the game he shows up in isn't as janky on release as Keanu's game. So you're excited for Witchfire, right? Which is the next game that we saw.
I'm excited for Witchfire. It is really cool. It very much feels to me kind of like a Metal Hellsinger sort of gameplay. Like, it's not a rhythm game, but just the way the shooting is that kind of like, I don't know, like I guess more of like doomy kind of style. It looks like it's got good movement. I really like the kind of, like eerie fantasy setting. It's made by the same team that made The Vanishing of Ethan Carter, which makes sense as to why it looks so incredibly gorgeous, because that game was incredibly gorgeous. Yeah, but the devs have said it's a Souls-like, Doom-like shooter. So
see, okay, what does this mean? We're going too far here, everybody. It can't be 2 likes at once.
Well, it's somewhere in between. If you have them both on the end of the spectrum, this is perfectly in the middle, I suppose. I think it has a good dodge roll, and maybe you lose stuff when you die. I don't know. Hard to tell. There's some melee though, like you can go and punch guys. There's elemental magic. You're fighting creepy, gooey skeletons. Like, I actually think Witchfire looks really cool. It reminds me of a game called Remnant from the Ashes, which you might have to remember for later in the showcase.
So Witchfire to me does look really cool. Like, I think it looks nicely polished and fun to play and everything. I the one thing I gotta say about it is, like, I love this aesthetic as well, but I think I'm getting a little bit oversaturated with it. I feel like a lot of things coming out these days are all doing this like kind of dark, sort of like in the foresty kind of, witch demons kind of thing. And it's like, I love that art style, but I don't like it when everything has it. And I feel like between this and a few other games like Path of Exile, and then the one you just said as well, Remnant, and it's like a lot of games just have this look. Lies of P as well, like, it's kind of similar. It's very different, like, but it's, creepy tone kind of stuff.
Yeah. I understand, and then there may be a world where I get that fatigue, but I sat through so many years of its space time that I am so on board with everything being dark fantasy time, because that's my time.
No, I mean, fair enough.
I've waited all these years for your goddamn space games. No, that's fair. I mean, variety is always good, right? But I think it's one of those things where I'm just glad there's so many of these games, because I just always have one in my back pocket to pull out when I feel in the mood. So.
You're saying Final Fantasy fans reading well. Like, every second game coming out these days is a Souls-like, so.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that they all feel like a Souls. Like, you can say it all you want, but they're not.
That's exactly right. It's like being a first-person shooter in the 2010s.
Yeah, that's true.
So there's a VR shooter after this, Crossfire Sierra Squad. I mean, I don't have a VR. I'm sure it's fun.
I don't have VR. I will say that none of these shooter games in VR look fun to me, but then they dual wield, and it's like, oh, hang on. I don't know what it is about the second they've got 2 guns. It's all of a sudden exciting.
I just like the idea of like pointing in different directions and doing all that cool stuff.
One gun could not care less. 2 guns, ooh.
That's a good point, though.
Same thing.
That's a good point, because if you think about it, there's not really any games where you can dual wield guns in the game, but shoot them like wherever you want in different directions. VR is like the only way to make that work.
Exactly, because normally, like, you still have your like mouse or your cursor that you are like directing towards. Like, you have your stick, like that's the only way it really works. Like, maybe in some like twin stick bullet hells you could have like both things, but then how do you move? It's really like, it's not something that's easy, I think, to control
No,
on
I
a
think
controller. But in VR, there's no limitations. It's like every VR game should be Beat Saber or a dual wieldy gun game.
Beat Saber coincidentally a dual wielding game too. I think we're onto something here. I think we've unlocked the secret of what a good VR game is. It's dual wielding.
I think so.
After that, we had Remnant 2. This was a complete surprise for me as well. I didn't even know they were working on a sequel, and I know we talked about Remnant before on like a way long ago episode of the show back when it was on PS Plus. But I really enjoyed Remnant when I played it. I think it was cool that it was 3-player co-op, like designed specifically for 3 being the max. And I played with a couple friends. You know, we had some fun, like the way that it was randomly generated in the sense that you could run into bosses at different times. Like that was pretty cool. I could definitely see a world where this comes out, and you know, I don't know if it's coming to Game Pass or something, but if a couple friends were like, you know, we should play this, I would definitely be interested in checking it out if it's like an improvement on the first.
Yeah, I agree. I'm pretty excited for this. I never finished the first one, and I really want to go back and do so now. I think it's definitely something that like is worth playing co-op if you have the chance to. I think I played 2 instead of 3, and it still felt good. But yeah, I like this. The aesthetic seems a little bit more almost like tech. Oh, it's like tech alien fantasy in this one. Like,
Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit of Returnal, actually, which is like a huge like positive bias for me to have. But yeah, I'm super excited about this game, and I don't know, maybe like slightly above Witchfire, but they both look similar, and I want to play both of them.
The fact that this one is co-op is a huge boost to me over Witchfire, like because I think that would get me in a lot more. But yeah, let's hope it improves on the first. Interestingly enough, Sonic is back, and my prediction was wrong. Or no, I didn't predict Sonic for this. Oh yeah, we didn't talk about our
Sonic
predictions
DLC.
yet. That was DLC.
You predicted Sonic DLC.
I shouldn't have said the DLC. I should have just said Sonic, because we have a new 2D Sonic game. It's 2D Sonic Superstars. It's not a Sonic Mania sequel. It's got a new art style and is also a multiplayer game. I think it's up to 4 people, right? With Sonic and Tails and Knuckles and all those guys. And I don't know. It seems like a much different take on Sonic than we've seen before. Like there's a lot of kind of power-ups, almost in a Mario sense, that I got from the trailer. So it seems to have a lot less speed going for it as well, and maybe more, maybe that's to do with the co-op nature of it. I guess like full speed 2D Sonic would be pretty hard with 4 people.
You would just constantly be like off the screen or like having to wait if there's like an invisible wall for your friends. So yeah, that's a tough sell. This is kind of cool. I don't know if like anything would get me back into Sonic that wasn't Sonic Adventure 2 or Adventure 3 Battle.
Sure.
But I mean, I think it's cool. I really hope it does well, because poor Sonic fans need a few more wins.
I know. They really do. They're one of the most downtrodden groups in all of video games, honestly. God bless you, Sonic fans, for sticking up for what you believe in. I don't know, like something about this one felt off to me, you know? Like I would like to try this if someone gets it, but I don't know, the way it moved, like it almost seemed a little too slow in a sense. Like, what is Sonic if it's not super fast? I don't want to be like make a big judgmental about it. One thing I did read actually too, which was interesting, is apparently this is being developed by a studio which is led by the original game's developer.
Okay, so
development lead or something.
Maybe a very good sign.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. Like, I'm really not up on Sonic development teams, but I would hope that means something good.
You don't have your Sonic lore?
Sadly not. Sadly not. Although I am playing Frontiers here and there, so a little bit more Sonic than you, I guess. Honkai Star Rail is a game that I don't care about, but man, I don't know. It's going to be really popular, I'm sure. It's taking the world by storm.
Yeah. Yeah. You have a few anime games in there, and sometimes they're Persona, and it's really exciting, and sometimes they're not Persona, and you just kind of, it's where you get a snack or like whatever. No, I mean, I don't talk shit about it. As far as like JRPGs go, this one like combat system kind of looks interesting, but
well, do you know what this game is at all?
Hours to play.
This is not a JRPG. This is it is an RPG,
Is it the
I guess.
Genshin
This is a
Is it
Genshin
Genshin
ripoff.
game? Oh, then I'm
This
out.
is
Never
Genshin
mind,
with
I'm
turn-based
sorry.
combat instead of action combat is what it is.
Okay. Well, the turn-based combat does look like a step up. I will give them that. Other than that,
It's really unfortunate because they have a cool art style going on here in some senses. Like some of the designs, the weapons are kind of cool, like in a Persona-y way. Like if this was presented with the same art style, but they were like, hey, a Persona spin-off, we would not criticize the anime art style. We'd be like, this is fucking cool.
That is very true. I think it's just it's one of those things where it's like it really just is like if it's your niche area, like you know, like some people be like, oh, those Souls like games looks like they all look the same, and I'd be like, no, I
this
can
looks the same too. These all look the same.
Exactly. Like I could give you like a 17-hour PowerPoint presentation about how you're wrong, and I'm sure like people who are into those like JRPGs could do the exact same thing. But I think the one thing that stands out is they all use such a very similar art style. So at a very surface level look, they all look very similar. But I'm sure there's a lot of like nuances that do.
I think that's true of like pretty much any genre though, really. Like if you were to show me the HUD of any of those Souls-like games, I wouldn't be able to tell you the difference. Like just like I wouldn't be able to tell you which of these guys is from this game versus Fire Emblem versus Persona. Like I wouldn't be able to tell you that either. It just depends like what we're familiar with, I think is the difference.
True, yeah. It's
you can only see see the variety in something when you're familiar with the subject matter, I think.
Yeah.
That is anyway, that's just my own take.
And that's why it's good to, try new things out sometimes, because you learn a lot about it aside from your initial judgment.
Hey, and great segue, Kate. You couldn't have said it better because speaking of trying new things out, the next thing shown was Lies of P, which we are going to conveniently skip over for now because we're going to have a whole second segment on our thoughts on the demo.
That is correct. But one thing I want to point out before we do move on is that this article has summed the game up as having moody Pinocchio vibes, and that's just a phrase I want to stick around a little bit longer.
It's so specific, like, oh, what are the vibes tonight? Oh, moody Pinocchio.
Moody Pinocchio.
so well known. And then your friend you're talking to will be like, oh, I know exactly what you mean by that. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Like, I'm more of a mellow Pinocchio vibe guy myself, but I just love it. I think that's a phrase no one has ever uttered in their entire life, is moody Pinocchio vibes, and
until this moment.
I love it. Until this moment.
So speaking of art styles, what do you think of the Sandland art style? Because this again is anime. However, it is the Dragon Ball Z guy, which it looks a lot different than other anime styles to me.
Yeah,
I thought this was Dragon Quest.
Right?
I thought this was Dragon Quest.
I have two things about Sandland. Is first of all, I was very proud of myself because it's from a big time anime artist, and I was like, oh, maybe it's the Dragon Ball guy, and it was Akira Toriyama, aka the Dragon Ball guy. And two, I just think Sandland is so funny. It's just a funny name. We've been playing, me and a group have been playing a lot of like a Dune board game, and so that's like Dune the Desert Planet, and so we've been like just kind of, it's become like a bit of a joke to be like, oh, I'm gonna be like the king of sand, and so like being like the Prince of Sand has become this like stupid joke. So we saw Sandland, we're like, oh, you can be the Prince of Sand in Sandland. But no, I think it looks really cute. I like the art a lot. It's there's something really nostalgic about it.
100%. 100%. That it's very like iconically his art when you see Dragon Quest or DBZ or like this. I guess Sandland. I'd never heard of Sandland. Apparently, it's like an old franchise that they've had in their pocket for quite a while. I mean, I don't know anything about it. Be cool to look it up though. I don't know if I'll play it. Probably not. I mean, there's too many things, right? What is Sandland? I don't think so. Okay, speaking of games we're not going to play, how about maybe the most generic fantasy game name of all time, Throne and Liberty, from Amazon Games. It's an MMO that'll probably get shut down when it doesn't make enough money for Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. I mean, they made a gorgeous, wonderful trailer, and I will say the one thing I will give them credit for is like being able to turn into an animal at will and like be an eagle and like fly around and then go down on the ground and be a person. Assuming that it actually plays like that, it doesn't just here's the designated be an eagle spot and then you must fly here and you're done. But yeah, it's A, an MMO, that's already a big ask, and B, it's the Amazon MMO, so yeah, I'm out. But
that's the thing. The three colors of magic ain't doing it for you, Kate. You don't want to become a blue magic master.
So here's the problem: is I would like to be a yellow mage, but I'm sure being a yellow mage actually requires you to pay $40 for the extra color. So it's a tough sell.
You know, I hope we're wrong about this because like clearly there's a lot of very talented people making like this trailer and some of the gameplay looks cool, but you just hope this isn't one of those like they're showing it off to be something that it's completely not, and it's gonna, you know, just be there to make a bunch of money and like figure out how to monetize it instead of actually making the game first, you know?
It's true. I like to think I'm pretty optimistic, and I typically am the person that is like, don't be so hard on the showcases. Like, just because it wasn't for you doesn't mean it's bad. And like, you know, we're here to celebrate games. It's a very positive thing. So I hate kind of like dumping on a trailer, but like if there's any trailer you're gonna dump on, it's maybe the Amazon one. But like you said, I hope they prove me wrong. It actually is a cool trailer. Like without any branding or naming, it actually looks pretty cool.
Yeah, that's the thing.
It's just that there's not a lot of like the confidence would need to be built back up for me to, you know, care about this.
Yeah, true. Maybe a good way to say it is there's sometimes when it's a studio we really like, oh, Insomniac or FromSoft or one of those, like we're like, okay, whenever they announce something, like I'm in until I'm shown something that I'm really like not interested in, like, but my default is that I'm very interested. And then there's most of the games which are like in the middle. And then there's some which are like, when I see a game published by Amazon, that instantly puts it in that it has to win me over. You know, it's starting on the back foot, especially when it's like generic fantasy. Like that's my least favorite setting of all time. So I don't know, double whammy for me.
I think that's a really good way to put it, is like never 100% count something in or out, but go into it with like the context of where it is being created to know if you're gonna, you know, let that color your bias a little bit, but don't rely exclusively on that to make your decision.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because you get burned that way sometimes, you know. But yeah. Warhaven's coming to Steam Next Fest for free. I couldn't tell you what this is. I missed this part as well. This is the Nexon game, right? Wait, is this the one that has like tons of people fighting all at once?
Yeah, this is this like big like war game where you're all like knights and you're like bashing people's swords and hammers and stuff. And I think there's also like a bit of magic, it looks like. So it kind of reminds me of that like For Honor, but I think it's a bit more, it looks a bit more action instead of the like For Honor kind of was a bit more like 1v1s. While there's
For Honor was like 3 teams of 2, right? Or like 4 teams of 2 or something like that?
Yeah, I think it was teams, whereas this one is like a much larger, bigger, like epic battlefield. I don't know, I think like, or it's like Chivalry is another one of those games. It actually looks like pretty cool based on the trailer. Like some of the character designs are gorgeous. They've got like a guy who is just straight up Dark Souls armor. Like it has to be a reference. I know him from Dark Souls 1. And then you've got like a paladin kind of character, and she's got this like magic halo around her. Like I think it looks cool. It's, you know, coming out I think soon as like a free demo. I might actually give it a try.
Yeah,
but
you should. I would be very interested to see what you think, because I like this. This is one of those games I want to observe it with my binoculars from a safe distance, because I'll tell you right now, PvP close-handed combat, that's not for me. Fantasy knights and all this stuff, no, not for me. And then it's online and there's so many people, like, will I have lag because my internet's not great and because it's going to be laggy? Like, this is such a smooth video, right? So I don't think I would try it, but I'm so interested how this runs because like the idea of being in one of those big fights, like you've seen them all the time in Game of Thrones and like Lord of the Rings and all those shows. It's like, that is such a, we don't really get to experience that in games, right?
Yeah, or if you do, it's like just it's like a single player, like, and you kind of, you know, cut through your swath of enemies to get to the
or it's something like what's that game where we always like the one we're not interested in that's got like tons and tons of enemies? Dynasty Warriors.
Dynasty Warriors, yeah. No, I think it's cool. It's the 19th for a week. It's got a demo out on Steam. I might actually give it a shot. It looks kind of cool.
You should do it. Put that in your calendar. I'd like to hear it.
Okay, deal. I'll plan a night for it.
Cool. After that, Alan Wake 2. What a reveal this was. This was fucking creepy. It had some Yellow Jackets vibes going on with that deer-headed person. That's the first thing I thought of.
Me too.
But I did not play the original Alan Wake. It's one of those games that, you know, I actually am very interested in looking up the story. Like, I've always meant to watch, like, you know, the cutscenes and all that stuff. I definitely will now because This game was very interesting to me, and I would like to play this, depending how scary it is, either by myself or with a group.
Well, it will be on at my house, so please, please join us for that. The more company I have, the better, because I'm very scared of horror games. That being said, Alan Wake is the one horror game I have played alone, because I just wanted to play the story so much that I actually did sit through it on my own. And it was horrifying. I really liked it. I'm excited for Alan Wake 2 because I really like the world and the characters. It's basically jumping into a Stephen King novel, and it's not. It wears that on its sleeve. I think the first game starts out with a Stephen King quote, it's very heavily inspired, and I've read a lot of his books. I will say I'm a little bit disappointed by the way Alan Wake 2 looks. Not because I don't think it looks good. I think it looks like a fantastic survival horror game. But the first game was not very traditional survival horror. It had this really unique mechanic where the darkness was the problem. And so you had a little pistol and you had a flashlight. And it had a mechanic where for the majority of enemies, you couldn't actually interact with them until you shined your flashlight on them for a certain period of time to get the shadow off of them. And then you would be able to shoot them. So it was a lot of really tense encounters of you're just shining your light, but then you got to run and then you got to shine the light again. And it was just a really unique mechanic. Whereas this game looks a lot more like traditional horror game style, where you've got just the regular gun and you're walking around and spooky things monsters are jumping out at you, a little bit more like Resident Evil style, and Evil Within, and they all kind of follow that similar sort of gameplay loop. So I think it looks good. I'm still definitely going to play it, but I hope that flashlight mechanic comes back in some way in this game, because it was so unique to the first one.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I'm interested in the first one too, is that reason. And I think it's so cool, especially for a horror game, of you have to look at whatever's trying to be scary towards you, because you have to shine the flashlight. You have no choice but to interact. You can't run or hide. All that
stuff. It was
so
tense. And then if you did hide, instead of trying to go in a room and sneak under the bed or something, you'd be there's a lamppost over there. Oh my God. If I can just run and make it and stand in the light, I'm safe. It was really, really unusual. And yeah, it was just, it was a fun game. So, but
might have to play that one together. Might have to try it. Warhammer 40K was gorgeous, and it's a 3-player co-op game. Similar to Remnant, I guess, if you're just more into the Space Marine stuff. I don't know if it's similar in gameplay wise, but it looks like, it's over the shoulder, third person shooting. Their armor is really cool. I like the design. I don't know anything about Warhammer, but the armor looks nice.
What's so funny to me is I think this is they're kind of more like horde games, so I'm just sort of out by nature of that. But I have this weird thing about Warhammer where I just think the models are so bulky. They're
it's
just
Gears of War.
Yes, it is Gears of War syndrome. They're just refrigerators stomping around out there, and I don't know, every time I see it, I'm nope, don't like Warhammer. Probably would have a ton of fun if I played it, especially co-op, but man, I just hate the way they look so much.
That's fine though. I mean,
yeah, if it was the exact same model, but just proportionate to a human being instead of Kratos but bigger.
You know what they remind me of the most is in Fire, the original Fire Emblem, when you upgrade the general and they have that big armor. That's what they look like to me.
Yes, that's exactly what they look like. But just pause the trailer when you can see some characters and just look at how small their head is coming out of their massive shoulder quadrants, and it is absolutely hilarious to look at their tiny head. Yeah, so that's the depth of my Warhammer critique right there.
So what we basically said to you, everyone, is that this is not the podcast to come to if you want any sort of Warhammer in-depth knowledge. Yes, Your Grace was the game up next, and I played the first one actually. Have you played Yes, Your Grace?
I played a little bit of it. I started it with someone, and then it was we played once and never played again. But I really liked what I played, and I had trouble making a lot of decisions. Maybe I overthink
Well,
things.
it's also because if you play with someone else, you got to debate the decision with them. That
Yeah,
makes it a lot
that's
harder.
that's true. But I really like this. I like the style of game. I think the trailer is gorgeous. I love the art that they have for Yes Your Grace, like the towns you have, and it's raining outside, and oh, it's just so pretty.
Mm-hmm. I wish I liked the first one more than I did. The concept I think was more appealing to me than actually playing the game. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like part of that was just because I didn't play a whole lot. Like I don't know, I played it a couple times too, probably a little bit more than you if you only played once, but I just felt like the decisions just weren't leading up to much, and it took a little while, and I couldn't figure out where the characters were, and like some of the problems I'm just like, I don't care where, like, what you're eating for dinner, you know. So I'd be interested in like seeing what this one turns up to be as a sequel. Like, how does it expand on the first one? You know, is there more complicated things that you need to figure out? Like, you know, just how does it expand? I think it's a cool concept, and a second try would maybe be
Mhm.
something I'd be interested
Well,
in.
those are kind of the best games to get a sequel in some way, right? When the first game has a really interesting concept, but you don't feel like they've executed it quite how you'd like. So then a sequel comes along, you're like, oh, what did they learn from the first game? Like, is it going to shore up those weaknesses I thought it had?
Mm-hmm.
And then potentially that concept like does get executed well. So it's kind of like a second try at like, maybe
Yeah,
get it right this time.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, that's
I
exciting.
hope that's
That's
the case.
exciting.
I hope so. We'll see.
Hmm.
John Carpenter's Toxic Commando. Now this is where I couldn't watch for this moment. So, but this sounds interesting. Please tell me.
Yeah, so I guess he's a pretty notable dude. I think he did like The Thing, I want to say. And you can just fill in the blanks of all the other wonderful things John Carpenter has given us, which I'm sure are plenty. Um, this is like it's kind of cool. I couldn't decide if I was into this because on one hand it looks like a very like Left 4 Dead, just like zombie horror, and like you're firing from the back of a big jeep that's driving around, and it's just like carnage. But then every now and again in the trailer, there's just like one cool monster you're fighting alone, kind of like a boss fight. And that part looks fun. But I don't know if I want to play a like zombie horde game to get there.
Hmm. So I'm clicking through the trailer right now, just as you've been talking. I was not
Mm-hmm.
expecting to see zombie hordes, but I looked up John Carpenter as well, and he is now. This is going to make us sound like idiots for not knowing this, I guess. But he's an American
Mm-hmm.
filmmaker. He's from he's pretty old now, so I guess maybe that's why we haven't heard of him. But he's like, I guess, known as the master of the low budget horror film. So
Okay.
that's actually kind of cool. That makes me more interested in the game to see that.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. I think it's a lot of like, and like those old films are really interesting, right? Because it's like, how do you make this monster? Like, what are your resources? How do you shoot it? Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of really interesting like
Yeah, what
film.
are the visual tricks you're going to use and the camera angles and stuff to make up for the fact that you don't have a lot of budget?
Exactly. So that's really interesting. Maybe this game has some budget though, and I think CGI is a little different than some tricks. I'll say
Yes.
too that they had a really fun trailer. Like you might not have played it with music, but it has like like loud kind of upbeat music playing as you're going through it. I think it was, I want to say, Def Leppard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't
Oh
have the
no,
music
sorry, it was
on. That's for
Bon.
sure.
I think it was Bon Jovi. I'm trying to remember. I don't have it playing right now either. I think it was like Bon Jovi or like one of those like
Yeah.
those kind of things. So I think that's at least got like a fun vibe to it. But I mean, yeah, it's zombie hordes again. We've been there.
We've been there. And speaking of where we've been, now this Baldur's Gate 3, this is for you.
Yes. Oh, real. We played the Baldur's Gate like alpha or something like 2 years ago. This game has been in development for so long, but I that's not like a bad thing when it comes to oh Larian Studios. Their games are just so incredibly jam packed. Like Divinity Original Sin 2 is by far the longest game I've ever played, and it is like dense and just oozing with content, and you play it for like 200 hours and you're like, okay, if I replayed it, things would be totally different because I'd make different choices and people wouldn't be racist to me because I picked being a lizard person. And like, there's just so much in these games. Baldur's Gate, I think, appeals to me slightly less because it's D&D instead of just their own fantasy.
Oh, is
and
it
I really
D&D?
liked.
Is it actually
It is
branded? I
D&D.
didn't know that.
It is, yeah, it is branded D&D. So Baldur's Gate is, I believe, a place in D&D. And it also uses the same combat system. So the combat is a little bit different than,
That's
it's still
interesting.
turn-based, but it's D&D combat instead of being the like turn-based they made for Divinity, which I personally prefer because I think D&D combat is a little bit restrictive in terms of how you can do your turns, but that's a whole other conversation. But
That's
I
a
mean,
bonus
D&D lore
episode.
is that's a bonus, but D&D lore is super cool. I mean, there's like, years and years of iteration on it with like monsters and gods and like the underworld, and like it's awesome. Like these games are so fun when you have like even like play couch call with 2 people, or you can have a group of up to 4 online, like, and it's just like they're so great if you want to commit to playing like a big long campaign game. So Baldur's Gate is finally going to be a real game in August. Years coming. It looks fantastic.
Fantastic. Speaking of what else looks fantastic, it's my turn now. Spider-Man 2 showed up again. There wasn't a whole lot shown this time. I guess we saw more at the Sony showcase, but we did get a release date, October 20th. Place your pre-orders now, or at least I will when it's available. Man, this just looks so cool to me, and I love the way they're kind of teasing it. I like the way they're presenting this game too, and it's because, out of all the AAA games that are kind of coming out, like sequels to Sony's first party stuff that's come out, I feel like Spider-Man 2 is probably the one where we would have said, like, before seeing it, we can guess what this will be like the most. Like it's Spider-Man, like it's more prescribed of what is going to be happening than other franchises, just because of our familiarity with the character, right? But I really like the way they're kind of doling it out. Like, there's so much conversation right now of like, who is Venom in this game? Because you don't actually see like who is in the suit, and it's confirmed, I think, that it's not Eddie Brock. So it's like he's generically like Spider-Man in most stuff, and I know Peter has the symbiote, but I've seen like different things going online. It's like, well, is Kraven wearing Venom? Like, is Kraven and Venom the same guy? Like, is Genki the one that gets the Venom suit? Is it Harry Osborn? Like, we just don't know. Is it Mary Jane? Like, she could be Venom. I think that's such a cool mystery to play around with a character that we know so well. And the developers have said, they're trying to tell a very different story than a lot of other core Spider-Man stuff. So that really just excites me a lot. And as well, like, just adding Venom's powers in, he's got a much more heavy looking style, a lot more different attacks, which I think is nice because, Miles Morales and Spider-Man largely have a similar style of play. Yeah, I couldn't be more excited to see this game. And I think the reason I'm most excited actually is the narrative. Because I just fell in love with like this iteration of these characters when I played the other 2 games, and now seeing like Miles and all of them come together, I'm just like, this is Spider-Verse but in a video game, and I want to play it so badly.
Spider-Man is in such a good place right now, just in terms of like Spider-Verse is like Spider-Man 2 is coming, like it's so perfect. And I think it's a really unique place that they're in, because I think like you kind of hit a point where you're like, okay, I'm saturated. Like, we've seen Spider-Man stories so many times. Like, there's 3 big movie series, there's all the cartoons, and like, I mean, there's a million comics, and they do change things up, but like largely like, okay, we kind of know the Spider-Man story. But then you get stuff like Spider-Verse and like what you're saying about how you don't know what Venom's going to be, and there's all these surprises. And I think it's this really unique like area that Spider-Man's in, where like basically anyone who sits down to play one of these games now is very familiar with Spider-Man, so they can kind of like skip over a lot of that and like the shorthand of it and just do something a little bit different. And instead of it just being like, okay, like a surprising story, it's like specifically surprising because of what you already know, and that like instead of being like saturated, it's almost like enhancing these new ones that are taking a very different like spin on things. So
that's true.
I'm
it's
kind
almost
of interested.
Oh, I was sorry to cut you off. I was going to say that's such a good point. Like, the surprise can actually reemerge when you know something very familiar, if they're willing to really twist what happens within the familiarity. That's a great point. The one thing I will say that maybe is the first negative feeling I've had towards this game, though, is that they said in the interview they had there during the showcase that the map is basically doubled in size. They're adding Queens and Brooklyn into the Manhattan area that was in the first one. And I like it in the sense that there'll be more variety of locations to go to. But whenever there's mention of like a huge open world that's bigger and bigger, that's like twisting a knife that's kind of in my stomach, you know? Like I don't like to hear that. I'm going to reserve judgment though, because there was a really good fast travel system in this game. And also like the traversal is the best mechanic that these games have. And I know they're putting the wingsuit in this game as well, so you can actually fly around, and apparently that's even faster than swinging. So I don't know how you can get much faster than the first game was, but I'll hold judgment. But I think that's definitely a detractor for me mentioning it's going to be double.
I think Big World is good for Spider-Man because I have actually swung now. Since we last talked about Spider-Man, I have done...
Doesn't it feel good? Oh my God.
It feels so good. My roommate just started playing the first game, so I'm hoping he sticks with it because I want to watch the story, but I don't want to necessarily commit to playing it. This is like the best compromise for me. But I did a little bit of swinging. Feels good. I think Big World is good, but I think like just... no Assassin's Creed towers. Like, there's a little bit of, like, open world shenanigans going on in the first game, which, like, fair enough. It's a few years older now. I don't know if Miles Morales did that as well, but, like, big world, but fill it with good stuff. No towers. Please, no towers.
Well, the first game didn't have towers. We're not. It's not no Ubisoft game, but what it does have is like, it's a bunch of speed running trials all around the city, and like, oh, go take photographs of these landmarks. But to me, like, at least that was interesting, because you're going around New York and like taking pictures and stuff. Where the repetitive stuff came in from open world in the first couple games is like, solve 10 street crimes, and there's only 5 or 6 different crimes that can happen. So once you've done that for a little bit of time, then you're all of a sudden you're like seeing the same car chase type of stuff. But I just stopped doing them and just ignored it. So that's
exactly fine. That's always the solution, is just do the main content. You are allowed to do that, even though it feels bad sometimes.
If you mainline Spider-Man, you're gonna have a great time. I'll tell you that right now. Okay, let's wrap this up here. Pal World is up next. Now, this game is Pokemon with guns, and I don't know if there's another game I'm more morbidly curious about than Pal World, of anything that's supposed to be coming out. Because we'll talk about Cassette Beast on an upcoming show. We've both been pretty into that one, and I think now I'm like renewed some excitement for whatever the next creature game is that we play. And Pal World, I'm for sure interested in seeing what this is. Like, why do they have AK-47s?
I'm gonna play this game. Like, what's crazy to me about Pal World is like I expected it to be bad because like the premise is obviously a joke, and often those joke games are like the hook is the joke, so the game doesn't have to be good, right? And like that's sometimes what you can get through with. Like, people will buy it for the novelty of like it's funny, but it actually genuinely looks cool. Like, it's a pretty world. Like, I like the creature designs, especially the little sheep. And like it looks like the combat actually is gonna like it looks kind of relatively fun, like almost like a like Dauntless kind of style where you're like shooting monsters and stuff, and then you're catching them, and then they have guns. Like, I don't know, it's so bizarre, but like I think getting past the novelty of its Pokemon with guns and that's funny, I think it genuinely looks like it could be a good game.
I think so too.
Wild.
I think so too, because I'm thinking it like the way I'm thinking of it is when I played Pokemon Scarlet and Violet earlier this year, or Arceus, either one. Like, I personally had a good time with those games for what they were, and the combat is kind of interesting because you're in the battle, but your trainer doesn't do anything while they're fighting it, but you're in the open world. So this is kind of like, to me, is taking that, and it's like, right, you're going to send your creature out, it's going to fight for you, but then your trainer's not going to be useless. You're going to pull out your AK-47 and start helping out your Squirtle or whatever it is. Could you imagine it?
Your Blastoise got the cannons, and you got the
got your own cannon. I don't know. I don't know what to say about this other than I'm very interested, and I need to see what this ends up being, because this is crazy.
Well, January 2024, so we are still like a ways off. It's one of like the later release dates that we got, but like please show us more Pal World.
There's a Black Desert online expansion. Nothing to say about that one, right? But I'm sure it's going to be fun. Lord of the Rings Moria what is this? This seemed to me like what's that, Deep Rock Galactic, but with Lord of the Rings dwarves?
It reminds me a lot of Deep Rock Galactic. It's like a co-op survival crafting mining game, and it's crazy to me that it's branded because I was like, oh, this is like Lord of the Rings dwarves, and then it actually is Lord of the Rings dwarves. I mean, people fucking love Deep Rock Galactic, so if it's even like
It's fun.
comparable to that, it's gonna probably be really fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Deep Rock is fun. I mean, yeah, this is just gonna be there's the
all,
Rings of Power going on, right? So it's gonna be all Lord of the Rings
all
stuff going
I'm
on.
gonna say is if Windrose makes it on the soundtrack, I will buy this game. If you didn't get Windrose for your dwarf mining game, you've made a mistake. And for anyone who doesn't know Windrose, just look up a Windrose concert on YouTube. And you're welcome.
Okay, so Banisher's Ghosts of New Eden was next. This is unfortunately another one that I missed, but this is from the Vampire developer, I believe is what they say here. And I know you played Vampire, so what do you think of this one?
Well, I didn't love vampires, so there's...
This is when the person just looked at the wall for like minutes, right? Vampire?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. There's some really weird stuff going on when I play Vampire. But anyway, we've seen a story trailer of Banisher's Ghost of New Eden that was really cool. I think it's like you're being haunted by your ex-wife is kind of the vibe I get. And I
A lot
think,
of
I don't
people
know,
in
they're
that
trying to
position,
bring
Kate. A lot of people in that position.
Okay, but she's like really a ghost this time, so it's literal. And I think it's supposed to be kind of like a mystery and a little bit like maybe you're trying to bring her back. There's like some supernatural stuff going on, but she's also giving you ghost powers. So like it seems like very cool, and their like relationship is going to be at the heart of it. So I had my eye on this game. Thought it looked really good based off of that. The writing seemed great in the first trailer. We got a gameplay trailer here, and I am still interested, but slightly concerned is how I feel. I think it looks like it could maybe be a little bit like the combat just is very like snappy, like maybe almost like a like the classic Arkham RPG combat sort of thing. But that
Right,
being
not your
said, there
preference.
looks just not my preference. But that being said, there looks like there's a lot of cool magic and like kind of spells and like story choices. And I think if the story is interesting, the combat looks like fun enough that I'd be into it. And like almost like Bioshocky, where you've got like stuff coming out of your hands. Yeah, I still think I'm pretty interested in this game just based on the story and the setting and how like gorgeous it looks. But I just hope that it's fun and not too like hack and slashy for my taste anyway.
Right. So I don't have a lot to say about this one. I mean, I'm glad you're looking forward to it. I think it has some stuff going for it. All I'm going to say is that the way everything you just said about this game is setting off light bulbs in my mind of the way I was talking about Forspoken last year. And then that game came out to a bit of a thud. So I'm hoping that you don't have to relive that experience with this.
Yeah, I think this game, I mean, based on what I've seen in the demo I've played for Forspoken, I think this game definitely looks like it's going to have more potential than Forspoken, but we'll see. I think the big difference is like, based on the trailer, I expect the writing to be good. Like, that can carry a game for me. If I'm really invested in the story, I can do B tier gameplay. That's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, like, something that's S's across the board is the best game, but like, if one aspect is really compelling, you might, breeze through the rest of the game, but we'll see. Problem is that it's on the flip side too, is if there's an F tier part of the game, it will ruin the rest of the, middling kind of aspects. So yeah.
A game that will probably not have too many middling aspects because it's probably going to be really good is Like a Dragon Gaiden, the man who erased his name. And he's back, everyone. It's Kazama Kiryu. He makes a return.
I thought he erased his name.
Well, he's going to be called something else. I believe his name is like Juryu in this game. I think I saw in the trailer. It's clearly like some joke, right? Because it's Yakuza and they're like going to change his name and like, oh, no one knows who this guy is or something. What more can you say? Like, I fucking love Yakuza. If I had more time, I would play all these games. You just got to pick your times. But man, I'm so happy this series just goes and goes.
Yeah, I mean, every single time one of these trailers comes out, I always think to myself, like, man, I really got to play Yakuza. And I will go back on the record and say, man, I've really got to play Yakuza.
This one was interesting. What's up next? Under the Waves. This is published by Quantic Dream. Not developed by Quantic Dream, but published by them. And so this is kind of like one of those contemplative story games, I think. Takes place under the water of the guy in a submarine. in alternate future from I think the 1970s, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Looks kind of interesting. I mean, you don't get a whole lot of a sense of really what's going on, but Quantic Dream is for all their controversy. You and I have liked a number of their games, and so it's something that I'll be
Mm-hmm.
keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I get largely it's very much like an exploration game. Um, maybe some like mystery, maybe puzzles, I don't know, but I just like I'm very intrigued based on the footage we've seen. Like it just seems like such a cool world to explore and like underwater is not something that's done often and when it is done it's not always appealing.
Mm-hmm.
But this just like floating around, there's like sea life swimming around all over. I'm sure you're gonna run into some like massive like leviathan creatures. Like I bet it's gonna be like quite a spectacle to play. So I hope it's a little bit more of the exploration like story narrative journey type game and not so much of a like
Mm-hmm.
you know
Mm-hmm.
I almost like want less gameplay in a game like this because I think I just want to like 3 hours explore the world and be done. But
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we'll
Same.
see. Like it could end up being anything. So
If this is like sub 5 hours, I'm totally in. Huh? See submarine. Um, yeah, I think underwater is a fascinating setting. I think more games need to explore underwater. It's hard because it's like a 3D open space. Like, how do you prevent the players from going wherever they want? Like, you got to guide them right, but you can't be in the big ocean.
Mhm.
Where do you go? I think, yeah, this is cool to me. This is one of my more intriguing games, I think, from the showcase.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, we're almost done here. We got COD Season 4 next. We're just going to skip over this, but enjoy COD, everybody. And then we saw Fae Farm, which, I mean, it's a little creature game, but I think it's definitely aimed at a more younger style audience from what I could tell, but I'm sure it'll be fun. I'm assuming you don't have much to say about those two, so we'll go on. Next up, this guy came, the Snap developer, Ben Brody, and he really was, quite excited. He insulted card players by saying he's the best and never loses, and a joke that was clearly a joke, and he laughed after saying it. Like, I think this guy killed it, actually. He was pretty funny. Maybe he went on a little too long, but I liked his energy, He seemed to me like he was trying to be Joseph Pharisee, but didn't quite go all in.
Right, because he wasn't here this year and he normally shows up.
Yeah.
Or I guess maybe he's more at the Game Awards. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was nice. You gotta fill
Yeah.
that niche.
But definitely excited to see some additions to Marvel Snap, and a new mode is coming, I guess. Like, I'm a little like, oh man, this better not be where the game turns from like totally playable as a free game to like now you're fucked if you don't buy a bunch of currency. But at the same time, like, this game has been so successful, I feel like they're not going to tank it like that. And at very worst, we could just ignore the new mode, I guess. But it's cool to see some expansions coming. Yeah, I still play Snap every day, of course. Totally addicted. King Arthur, Legends Rise, and a new Fantasy Squad RPG. I must have missed this one, or I just looked over it because, again, not my thing. But are you excited for King Arthur?
I mean, it's kind of funny seeing a King Arthur game because it's like he's like the OG, right? But like we've had so much like Night Dragon fantasy stuff that it's like it seems like, oh, he just here's another one and it's kind of generic looking, but it's like, no, he's the guy. He's King Arthur.
That's such a funny point. You're so right.
Right? And like to be fair, looking at this trailer, I don't know how like legend accurate it is because I kind of like weirdly missed this somehow. I think
it's mobily, to be honest with
I
you.
must
Like,
have
it's
been
on
chatting. Yeah, I think I was chatting and kind of missed that this was a thing at all. I'm looking at it now and I was like, this is fantasy. This is not just King Arthur. Like, no fucking way that like
no, this is mobily. Look, I'm looking at the skill tree right now in the trailer, and it's like, advance this type of character to level 20. Oh, you're gonna need some gems to do that. Fuck this game.
Maybe that's why we dodged it.
I'm over it. I'm so sorry if I'm wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure we're not.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, I'm pretty sure that King Arthur doesn't have like fire spells normally. So,
well, Merlin enhanced him, obviously. Come on.
Well, that's true. Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, Unreal Legend 5 looks good. Yeah,
that's true.
Maybe it's
cool. That's bonus. So after that, we had Wayfinder, which is another one that I missed. Is this to do with League of Legends as well? I'm seeing something in the text about that, but definitely missed this one.
Yes, it is a League of Legends story, which is pretty like surprising. Apparently it has like light MMO elements. I'm not really sure what that means. not games aren't normally said to have like light elements. Like they're either an MMO or
Yeah,
they're
maybe it's like
not.
buying and selling armor and stuff, like some kind of currency system. I
Yeah.
don't know.
So I don't know. Like it doesn't really strike me as very League of Legends-y. Like I'm sure there's gonna be some
No.
characters that pop up, but like I would never, looking at this trailer, have like thought about League of Legends. But yeah, I don't know. It kind of just looks like a
Yeah,
like a
it's
co-op
kind of cool.
action
Like,
kind of game.
yeah, it's like medievally, but like a little different. Like, it's got a more colorful art style to it. So I will say that's a nice thing to see. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know. Stellaris Nexus was the game up next, and I think this is the last one that I missed as well. But this is the space one, and you're like exploring planets and stuff.
Yeah, I think it kind of reminds me of like a
it's a
really
4X.
like
It's a 4X game.
deep, yeah, it's like a really deep 4X game, which like it probably is really cool once you've like read the codex for 3 hours and like know what you're doing.
So the title here
yeah.
says that it's a hour-long 4X spin-off. So are they trying to make a 4X game that can be played in a short amount of time? Because that is actually quite interesting to me.
Interesting and appealing, and I wonder if it would be good, because the weird thing about those 4X games is like they are huge commitments, but like that's kind of the draw of them, is that like you want that like crunchy depth where you're gonna be like you have a headache by the time you're done, but like that's the idea of it. It's like you sit down to play a board game, you're like, do we want to play Codenames, nice fun party game, or like do we want to play this like 8-hour long tactical game of resource management that like if you even look away for 5 seconds you lose. And like I think that's like 4X games like are so in that realm to me, and I like them when I feel in the mood occasionally. So having a short one is interesting, because like will it just be a great accessible version, or is it just like missing the mark of what's fun about
I
4X?
hope, see, to me what you described is exactly what's not fun about 4X. I don't like the way that I have to spend so long to take these games and have to read the fucking codex and to learn what everything goes on. Like, to me, what Marvel Snap did for deck building and collecting cards, if this can do that for 4X, that will make someone like me be like, oh, I'm hella into this right now, because the concept of 4X is so cool, but I just don't have the commitment.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like I've got my fingers crossed, because if it works, I think that's amazing. Like, and the Snap has such a good analogy. Like I still play Snap, like not as much as I used to, but I still like will play games here and there, and I really like it because it's so accessible. And so like I hope it works out, but I just wonder, like, can everything be reduced to that like smaller
card building works really well to be reduced. Can the complexity of a 4X be reduced? Because you're right, like it would have to sacrifice like complexity or variety and the things you can do, right? Like to be able to be shrunken down. So would it change that? I don't know. That's for them to find out.
I hope it does work, because that could be really cool.
Another demo on June 19th. We could always try it out.
Yeah, it's right after my military or my like war game ends, so it's perfect timing.
There's another base building game called Space Trash Scavenger that we're definitely not going to play. There's a Star Trek and Star Trek Infinite. I don't know. I'm not a Star Trek person. This is a strategy game. Did you see this? I must have missed this one too. I'm sorry. Yeah, this is a bad recap on my half. I missed more than I thought.
I think I saw Star Trek and was like, oh, time for a chat break. But I will say the next game coming up, I hope you saw Lisfanga, because this looks pretty cool. Okay, so this is giving me Hades vibes, like right off the. I really love the art of it. It's got like, I love the protagonist, the way she looks. It's got very like, past Hades vibes. I'm assuming you get like abilities like you can shift time, and there's all sorts of like different weapons by the looks of things. It looks super cool.
This is the one now she can copy herself, right? When you die, the copy comes out and like helps you. So I'm interested because there's other games that have done stuff like that too. But I mean, I'm blanking on what they are, but you're right. It is very Hades inspired. Hey, Hades is great. If this is, fun like that, then we need more games like this. Like we talk about other genres getting so many entries, right? Like Hades is still relatively alone. Like obviously there's lots of hack and slash games, but Hades is pretty unique. Yeah, this looks fun. So after that, it was Immortals of Avium, which for some reason my trailer is blocked, so I can't even watch this one right now. This is another shooter though, right?
Yeah, I've seen a few of this is almost getting a little death loopy potentially this game.
Mm.
It looks cool. I don't know. I'm. It's like the magic shooter, so it's almost kind of like
Oh,
Bioshocky
I
again
remember
in the sense
this
of like
one.
it's your hands.
This one to me looked like you were using Overwatch attacks.
This is yeah. This is the one you
It
said
looked
that
like
for.
Overwatch. I could not get that out of my head the whole time.
Yeah, I think it looks like it's got potential. This gameplay trailer made me feel like it looks a little bit slow, especially in terms of your movement. But like it's hard to tell, right? Like maybe they want the cinematic aspect of it to be really noticeable, so they were standing quite still to show off the
Mm-hmm.
way the magic works, or maybe it is just kind of a little bit of a slower pace game. But I think this is one of those ones where like it's really like in the middle of the seesaw for me, where like it could be cool. I kind of think the world seems sort of neat, the magic, maybe it's a little, maybe it feels a little bit like Doom shootery, but it's magic instead of guns. But then maybe it's kind of just, oh, I don't know. I feel like I've seen a lot of this game, and every time I see a new trailer, I'm like less sure what it's gonna be like. Not in a Death Stranding way, but just in a, like I don't really know what the gameplay looks like kind of way.
Yeah. Well, we won't have to wait long. It is out July 20th, so we'll see a bunch of reviews. Maybe we'll talk about it on the show. Who knows? Um, Fortnite was next. It was season 4's kickoff trailer. I mean, it looked cool. Optimus Prime is there. So that's pretty fun. I'll definitely be buying one of the Transformers skins as they come out because, I mean, come on. Like, you have to buy one of
I've
those.
been saying you put Rhinox in there, I'll buy one, but I'm only buying Rhinox,
You put
so
Rhinox, I will buy Nox.
I will buy Rhinox. That is correct.
I don't know which one I would
But
want. I feel like
but only Optimus Prime, and you don't get a dime.
perfect. I don't know. I feel like I'll buy Cheetor if he comes out. I think that'll be the
Oh
one I
yeah,
would pick.
Cheetor is good too. He's a good
That's
pick.
the one I would pick.
Solid pick on Cheetor.
And another solid pick, closing out the show. The one last thing, Jeff comes out. He's like, we got a big reveal from a well-known franchise, another entry. Could be a lot of things, people are thinking a lot of stuff. And, there's a lot of rumors, but it ended up being Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I don't think anyone expected this to be shown as soon as it has been. But man, this just looks so good. And after beating the first one, and seeing how it happens, and obviously it's doing some branching path stuff. Now, I've not played Final Fantasy VII, so I'm really the original. I mean, so I'm really in the dark as to like where the story goes. But I mean, I'm obviously gonna research all the changes that are made, and like I'm really interested in how they're tweak everything. But the world in this game just looks so expansive and open. I saw a screenshot of like when they're looking out into that distance, and I saw like a screenshot from the original game of like what that is supposed to be, and it just looks like it's just like unrecognizable, right? It's just so cool to have that side by side comparison, and everything about the first one, for the most part. I shouldn't say everything. It was a great game, and I hope, similar to what we said before, like they can improve on maybe some of the flaws. Like the side quests weren't overly interesting to me in the first one, and there was some difficulty spikes I had like for some of the combat. So I'm hoping if they can tweak some of those things, but I couldn't be more excited to play this.
This game looks awesome. I'm so glad they announced this. I really thought it was going to be Elden Ring DLC, the way he was like pumping it up. And like he seems so excited, and I know he's like a huge Elden Ring fan. It wasn't Elden Ring, but like I'm super stoked this is what it was. Like this game makes me wish I could like go back in time and have played the original like Final Fantasy VII and then be excited for this. Like Final Fantasy is not a series I've ever engaged with, but it is the kind of game like I'm gonna do something I've never done before, which is like watch a game on YouTube so that I can like just see how different this like Rebirth is from like what happens in the original Final Fantasy VII. Because like as far as my knowledge, no developers have ever done this before. They like remaster, like re-put out their game, but then secret surprise, it's not actually the same game, and there's this crazy like meta narrative story going on where things are different and like but they're not supposed to be, and then that's messing with like the universe. And I just think that's so incredibly cool that like I don't want to play this game, but I want to like pour over it and like study it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
that
fascinating.
is gonna be me before for like in the build up to this game, I'm gonna be like just watching as much like Final Fantasy VII stuff as I can.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat too, just because like the more I can learn about it before then, I'll have more context for this. This is a similar game to that situation we were talking about before, how like there's so much knowledge of the previous game that they can now use that to circumvent your expectations and make more surprises, you know? Like, is Tifa gonna die, you know? Like there's a scene in here where it's like pretty dangerous looking, and you know Aerith didn't die in the first one, so now is it like a swap, or is that what they want us to think, and it actually like no one will die, or will it be Barrett, or like it could be anything, right? Like it's so interesting in that way, because you're expecting a death but you don't know like when it's gonna happen. And
this
that's
is
one
like
of my
the ultimate goal of fanfic, but instead of being like, you know, not to say that no fanfic is ever good. Like I'm sure there are like so many well-written things out there, but typically that like, you know, expectation of a fanfic is it's of like lesser quality than the original. You know, it's not made by someone who's like that's their main like profession. But this is like the highest tier quality, but a like what if, and that's so incredibly cool to have that from like the actual like studio that made the first one.
Totally there. And along with Final Fantasy 16, I will be playing this on day one for sure. Thank God it comes out a little bit later, because I need some time to get through some other stuff. But yeah, that is the end of the showcase. So yeah, that was a lot of stuff to go over. Fun showcase though, and I loved the way it ended with that exciting footage of Final Fantasy 7. So I guess that will lead us into the second part of our show here today. So thank you all for skipping on the timestamp down here if you're joining us now, to talk about the Lies of P demo, which is something that I was very excited to have announced yesterday, or when we watched the showcase, and that it was coming out and you could play it right away. And you know, we're big fans of Bloodborne on this show, as anyone that's listened for any length of time will know. And this game is definitely very, very similar to Bloodborne. I don't know. I feel like maybe I'll go over what I have to say about it first, because I will definitely have a lot less than you, and maybe we can have a talk after that if that will work for you. So yeah, this game is very Bloodborne focused. You know, it doesn't hide that as well. Like I think it's clear what they're doing. So I like the whole setup of it. I like the way it feels. You know, I think it actually feels something about the camera. I was trying to make some notes about this as I was playing, and I couldn't quite put it into words, but I love the way it feels like it glides just so nicely, like frictionless. Like, you know how when you see someone with a camera and they have like that support thing in their videography in real life, and they can move around however they want, and it just stays like a steady camera. I don't know if that's what it's called, but I feel like this camera kind of has that when you're playing this game, and I just really appreciated that. One thing I don't appreciate, why can't I have a map? Like, come on. I understand there's some mystery in exploring the world and like, you know, uncovering things, and you don't want a map to like lead you to secret areas that you're not supposed to know about. But like, come on, if I've been somewhere, let me open a map to see, because I died at one point and I couldn't figure out where I was supposed to go, and I was like searching for a door that I had a key to. And I'm like, this is a waste of my time, man. Just let me like open up a little map. If people don't want a map, they don't have to use it, but I want one. So give me one. That's like the biggest complaint I had, because when you talk about the mechanics, like, I don't know, am I going too long? Do you have something to say about this?
No,
yeah.
I just think that's funny because it's just so like, it's so like Soul games just don't have maps. Like Elden Ring had one, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, this is crazy."
Yeah, but like I think that's what's interesting though, right? Because you're coming at it from a very Souls knowledgeable place, and I'm coming at it from a different spot. But like to me, that's something that, as a traditionally non-Souls person, would be something that would make me more interested in playing, is to have the option of that. And I think it would only like help others that, you know, could use that as well. Because getting lost is a bad feeling, and getting lost is an even worse feeling when the enemies respawn and they're tough to kill and you can die, and it just compounds into like a frustrating experience sometimes. But luckily that wasn't my experience. I could just see it going forward. I had a pretty good time with this game from what I played. It's a long demo. I played up till the first boss you get to, and I couldn't beat him, and I was like, you know what, I'm definitely playing this because it's coming to Game Pass, so I'm not gonna, you know, practice up on this right now. I'll give it another try when it comes out. Combat's really fun. Parry feels good. I played with the heavy sword. I like the way that it's kind of like L1, R1 is like your block and light attack, and then R2 is your
Mhm.
heavy attack, and then L2 is, I guess you can punch with your arm. I'm assuming you get a lot more abilities for that, but it's a cool setup, like having those different attacks. Um, yeah, I don't know what more to say really. I'm really in on this. It's really cool.
Yeah, that sounds good. I will say off the bat, I'm in on this game as well. I
Mm-hmm.
definitely am going to be playing Lies of P. I played a bit further than you in the demo, but I did stop because I didn't want to spoil the game. So I played like I felt like I had enough
Yeah.
of the feel of it. I was like anymore, and I'm just like taking this experience away from me when I do get the full release.
Mm-hmm.
So I stopped playing. It's very interesting because the game is so Bloodborne when you look at it, right? Like it's like steampunky Bloodborne.
Yeah, the
Like
UI.
there's carriages everywhere. There's like dead horses on the street. It's steampunk, but it's still that like Victorian kind of like underlay to it. So like it is very very Bloodborne. There's like a lady in a wheelchair is one of the main NPCs you meet when you get to the first like hub area, and it's like,
Okay,
oh, it's
one more thing about
Garmin.
these characters. I just gotta say, I love the
Yeah,
way the enemies move around. Like, you know that
yeah.
guy that comes up the hallway at you with this thing? And I'm gonna do this on video for people watching. He comes at you like this around the corner. He's like, he marches around the corner, and it's like, this is like, this guy's gonna kill me. I know he is, but he's taunting me right now with the way he's fucking walking here. That's
He
amazing.
does. And like they're very like mechanical the way they move, right? Because they're well, in this game they use the word puppets because it's easy to forget, but this is a Pinocchio game.
Yeah. The loading
Which
bar
like
was one of my favorite things too. Like how
oh
it's
yeah, the
the nose
line.
of like a little thing, like as the loading bar
Mhm.
goes up. That's such a cool detail.
Yeah. And like your lantern is like a little cricket and like it's just so ridiculously and like Geppetto is a big
Yeah.
like
It's
mythical
Jiminy
figure because he
Cricket, right?
made the puppets.
I
It
think
is,
Jiminy Cricket
yeah.
is your lantern.
It is, yeah, he's Jiminy Cricket. So it's like bizarrely Pinocchio, but it's easy to forget that it's Pinocchio when you're going around because it's like they're not wooden puppets, they're like mech robot puppets. So they all kind of like move in like weird kind of like, inhuman like as if their joints are like clicking into place, which I quite liked. I think there's a lot of really good style. I think the world is really interesting. That's probably the biggest sell for me just on face value is I think like we haven't really had a good steampunky one. There's that Steel Rising, which was reviewed,
Yeah, but that's
middling.
not on the same
Um,
scale as like a big release like this, you know.
yeah, it's not quite the same. And yeah, the world is amazing. Like it's just gorgeous wandering around in here. Like you're at like old Victorian like train stations, and then out on the streets. And so I love that. I think as far as other positives go, I really think they've got some interesting systems. I think it's neat. Like your health files, you start with 3 of them in the demo. I'm assuming you start with about that in the game, and you'll accumulate more. But it has a neat mechanic where once you run out, you start to accumulate more. And so the idea is that the more you hit enemies and fight enemies, it like kind of fills up the bar, and you can get a vial back. So
Yeah,
it
but just
doesn't seem
one
like
though.
just one, yeah. It doesn't, and you have to be completely out too. It doesn't seem to regen them. Like if you have 2 out of 3, it will not start regenning. It's only when you reach 0. But that's kind of interesting because it's got that extra little bit of like, well, do I press on? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I've lost a little bit of health, but I'm close to getting another vial.
Yeah,
So
and you know
I
what's
think
best about
that's
it
a neat
too?
system.
If it was
Mhm.
able to charge them, like if you'd used one and you had like the third vial was empty, if you could charge it, then you could just farm on small enemies and like fill it back up at
Mhm.
all times. But because it has to be empty, it means you're already going to be in a
Mhm.
perilous situation with no healing, and then you're always going to be in a
Exactly.
tough spot. And I think that's so smart.
Exactly. So I think that really adds to kind of what makes the flash system interesting in the first place is that like risk reward of do you keep going further out, but like you're running low on resources, do you go back to like your fire or your lamp or whatever the flavor is of the day and like
I can't remember what it's
heal
called in
up
this
and
game.
then try again. So I like that a lot. I also think it's kind of cool how you have like your main weapon and then you have like abilities that come with the weapon. So you kind of get this like gauge that fills up, and each ability costs like 1 pip of the gauge or like 2 pips of the gauge.
For
And I
video
think they also
listeners, it's
seem
the
to
blue bar there at the top.
it's the
Three.
blue bar, and it also seems to fill up as you fight. So it's kind of cool because you have these like instead of just having like an MP bar that eventually will just run out, you're incentivized to use your stronger abilities a little bit more frequently because they will regenerate. So I think that's cool. They seem to be tied to your weapon and also your weapon's handle. So in the demo, I couldn't see a way to take those apart from each other, but I really hope in the main game there's like an element of mix and matching, because I chose the dex build and I hated my weapon. It was a rapier, and I will tell you, this has like the worst moveset I've ever had. It's just like the teeniest, tiniest, thinnest forward stabs and nothing else. So like you had to be like absolutely like lined up perfectly to hit anything. But the pommel had a really cool parry on it. So like, oh, if I could take the parry off and put it on a different weapon. So I really hope that's kind of a system, because they are broken up in those two elements of the weapon, which seems to me like such smart shorthand for mix and matching.
Yeah, that's the impression I had too. I mean,
yeah,
there's no way you won't be able to customize this and break them apart.
exactly.
There's going to be some merchant and it's going to do it for you.
Exactly. And I think that's cool just for like striking a good balance of like how you want to build your character. And just having that like extra layer of variety seems really fun to make a moveset. So I like that. I really like as well. There's a mechanic where like your weapon durability, and that's always a thing in those games, but typically you don't really engage with it. It's just like every now and again you have to spend like 200 to repair your weapon. But in this one, it seems to go down pretty quickly, and you have an actual like thing on your arm where it like repairs it and you like grind it against your arm. And I ran out in a boss fight one time because it's pretty low, and like if your weapon
my weapon
breaks,
broke. I had that happen to me.
You like lose it, right? Like it's like you don't have your weapon anymore. So I was like in the boss fight, like running away from the boss, trying to like grind my weapon on my arm. And I think that, like, I don't know if I like it, but it was fun in that moment.
Yeah.
So it could be kind of interesting.
I like it. I think it's something that differentiates this game from other games in the style. Like they got to tweak it a little bit, right? And similar to like removing the handle, like you can do the grinding thing. Like to me, it reminds me a lot of Monster Hunter. Like Monster Hunter World, Monster Hunter Rise, both have like that thing where you got to sharpen your sword throughout the battle, and it's similar to like you got to find a good time to heal. Well, now you got to find a good time to sharpen your weapon too, or make a build where you can carry two weapons and maybe you switch to your secondary weapon once the sharpness runs out. Like it adds some variety in terms of like builds.
It's a potential interesting way of like another way of having tension in a fight. So, and also just I love the animation of it. Like it looks so cool when he like grinds it along his like it's like sparking off his like middle arm. So that's pretty cool. You kill a couple enemies and you're like standing in the eye like vroom.
Yeah.
Cool.
I did that too. One thing, it took me forever to realize you have to hold that. My weapon broke the first time because I would just press square and he would like touch it to his arm and I'm like, oh, that must have done it. And then I realized after you have to hold it and I'm like, oh, okay. I guess I'll learn that one the hard way.
Yeah. So there's that. I think a lot of the animations look really good. Like the when you get like a pair or like a backstab on an enemy, it's got the Dark Souls, like you walk up, they're turned away from you, you can backstab them, and he just pushes them with the force of like 500 suns. Like it's like such a fast like boom animation. So that's fun. So overall I think it's got a lot going for it. I'm definitely going to play it. I do have a couple small gripes with it that I think I either just need to maybe get used to or, find a way to circumvent. But, and this is maybe unfair because I'm literally playing Bloodborne. Like I stopped playing Bloodborne and then started this game up. So like,
it's a hard sell.
Very much like a back-to-back is not always fair, but your dodge roll in this game is absolute trash. It's so bad.
If you could just learn to parry everything, Kate, you don't need to roll.
Well, that's the thing is I came into this like, oh, it's Bloodborne, cool, and it's not Bloodborne. It's actually secretly Sekiro because like.
Don't tell me that. I'm interested in playing this.
No, don't worry. It's kind of in the middle.
It's not. This is nothing like Sekiro because I had a good time.
I'm just saying that's what it made me think of, because your block is a lot stronger of a tool than your dodge is. So you really have to approach it like it's not Bloodborne and you're going to dodge every single thing. You need to block a lot of stuff and then occasionally dodge. I think there's like definitely a flow you need to figure out to play this game. So I kind of wish the dodge was a little bit better, but that might just be how I want to approach it, and I need to learn the game thing versus the dodge is just kind of awful.
Fair enough. By the way, video listeners, this is the jackass that I imitated earlier that comes around the corner and tries to kill you.
There he is. That's the guy. And then the other thing I had about it. I find that you are very slow.
Mm-hmm.
Like
You
your
can sprint though,
character,
which is at least okay.
you can sprint, which makes it better, but I find your walk speed just feels a little bit sluggish in the game. So that again might be one of those things that's it'll go away as you get used to the feel of it. But my initial impression was I felt very like low character, and I wasn't expecting that based on how these games like typically feel. So yeah, I was a little surprised by that. But overall, I really like it. I definitely will play it when it comes to Game Pass. I'm still finding it hilarious that it's Pinocchio, but like you
I
do kind
know.
of forget about it a little bit as you're playing and like kind of in the moment.
Well,
And
you
then
would
you're
never
like
know this
something.
was Pinocchio if it wasn't branded as that. Like, there's nothing
Yeah.
about it that screams Pinocchio at all, aside from that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess the
Oh,
carnival setting, maybe.
yeah. Okay, and there's two other things I just remembered. I made notes and then I left them in the living room, and now I'm over here. So there's two other things. One is that, well, three other things. One is that there's big ladders, so it's a Souls game, and when you slide down them, it's got such a cool animation. So make sure to slide down ladders. Two, there's a couple systems that I think could be really interesting. I didn't get to the end of the demo, so maybe they come up and I just didn't make it that far, or maybe it's just like a tease for the main game. But when you leave into the world for the first time, it's like a rainy night. It specifically says that. Like, it doesn't give you your location, it gives you the fact that it's raining. And first of all, cool heavy rain reference.
I'm
Second
sure
of
that's
all,
what they were going for, yeah.
I think so. Second of all, it like implies to me that there maybe might be some like world permanence, like maybe like time will progress or the world will change, and so like tonight's a rainy night, but maybe like
Mm.
tomorrow will be like like a clear morning, and that might change the game a little bit. So that could be really cool. And my other potential theory of what could be a neat system in the game is that like when you get to the building, this is a small spoiler for you because you didn't quite get there, but when you get to the first building, they ask you if you're a human, and you have to lie and say yes because you are a puppet. But puppets in this world are incapable of lying. So that's like your fun Pinocchio reference. But they're incapable of doing it. But you, for some reason, have the capacity to lie as a puppet. So you
Hmm.
lie and you get invited in, and everything's fine. You have to like hide that you're a puppet. But it seems like there's like kind of like something that's going to be like catching if you're lying, like almost like
Like
it's
your
going to be
nose will
like
grow.
something, yeah, or like something in the background that's being like tracked. Like I got the sense of like the game remember that you lied, and maybe like there's going to be some like mechanic of like if
Hmm.
how much you lie might change things, which is like really
Interesting.
interesting. So yeah, I don't know. There's like a few things that I think like aren't in the demo that, or at least not in the parts that I played, that might hint at like there being like a few more unique systems going on. But it might
Wow.
also be me reading into things that maybe it's just raining. But you never know.
Yeah, I think that's to wrap this conversation up because we're a pretty long episode here. But I think
Mhm.
that's the thing that I'm most interested in about this game, like beyond playing it myself, because I did have a good time, is this game is clearly doing a good job at minimum of emulating a lot of things Bloodborne does. But a lot of what
Mhm.
brings, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but a lot of what brings the FromSoft in-house stuff to the top is what goes beyond the mechanics in terms of like the world design and the lore and like all that stuff. And I hope that because this is not a game from them, that they don't nail like the surface level like combat and mechanics and like the world, and kind of miss on that intricate map design and like the lore and like the little tidbits here and there. Like I, because that's so FromSoft, right? Like that's their juice.
Mhm.
And so I just hope that it nails those things, and it's not like one of those things where you're thinking of it in this complex way, and like a lot of people will be, and then it doesn't actually have that level that FromSoft or other companies could take it to. I don't
Mhm.
know if that's true or not, or like how you feel about that, but that's the only thing
Yeah,
I can
we'll
see
see.
being potentially like people would have higher expectations of this than it
Yeah,
ends up being. I don't think I'm right
my
on that, but
my guess going into it, and we can see if I retain this opinion after I've played more of it, is that I actually have more confidence or like higher hopes in that element of it. I think gameplay doesn't feel as polished to me as a
hmm,
FromSoft game. Like I think it's just FromSoft is like S tier. This feels like a good A. Like I think it's not quite feeling like a FromSoft to play, but it's definitely still in that style, and it's fun. But I actually think like there's a lot of item descriptions to read, and you find little like pages of messages that you can read throughout the world, and the world seems really neat. And like Geppetto's being built up as this like mystical figure that made the puppets and probably going to be evil in the end. And so I think like the world and the story actually do seem like they're going to be pretty neat. Whether or not they'll go like from soft levels of like, you know, you can watch 500 hours of lore videos afterwards, maybe not. But I actually think that element seems pretty interesting
Yeah.
so far, and like as weird as it sounds, is one of the reasons I want to play Lies of Pinocchio.
Never before have I been so convinced that I'm interested in Pinocchio lore, but I kind of am. And yeah, you're right, there is notes and stuff. I guess more what I'm saying is like, are they going to end up being holistically connected in a way that tells this deep narrative in the way the From stuff? Because a lot of games have little notes you can find, but they don't add to anything. They're just little flavor things in the world. Like, I just hope they kind of edge more towards like what makes the Souls to give this like the whole experience.
Exactly. I have my fingers crossed. So far it seems promising. And you know what I will say to cap this off, I really feel like this evening and yesterday morning when I played, I've had some moody Pinocchio vibes in my house.
Your room's looking pretty moody Pinocchio right now. It's dark back there. Like there's a shadow of you behind you.
That's right. Yeah, man. I started dying and I was like, you know what? I gotta fix the vibe in my house, and now I'm okay with the game. So
there we go. Well, we will have lots of fun exploring Krat Station in a short little time once we get this game on Game Pass. We're both gonna play it for sure. So. If you like what we had to say about it, I'm sure you can tune into some future episodes to hear all about Lies of P. But this is usually where we do listener mail, everybody. But of course, we already did that at the start of the show. So we'll end off by saying thank you very much for joining us on today's episode. I'm sure we could talk about this more, but you know, it's been a while, been a long one. So we're gonna call it here. And remember, this has been Cloud Control, the gaming podcast. It's not just good, it's good enough. And we will see you on the next episode.